Uh, what's up, everybody? I hope everyone's having a great day. We are going to be going over basically with the release of Smite 2. There comes the hope that gods that come into Smite 2 are, obviously gods that were in Smite 1, right? They want it, and you want them to be more fun, balanced, and just like easily accessible at a base level to every player. A god that has seen not much play in Smite 1 because of just generally a very challenging kit is Maui. This god is incredibly fun, but his kit's very hard to use. Not just because he's actually mechanically difficult, but because it's easy for enemies to know what you want to do as a Maui. Oh, where am I? Okay, doesn't matter. So we'll be going over basically Maui's kit and how it functions in Smite 1 and changes I want to see for his kit in Smite 2. So we'll go to the wiki page here. This is just like his kit, his passive. Basically, whenever a hard CC is hit on a god near you, you get your passive. You have to auto them. You have to auto an enemy, and then once you auto again, it does a pull auto, and you get this every 10 seconds. Okay. So my thoughts on the passive. The passive is actually one of the abilities I'd want to be changed the most. I think the passive should proc on only Maui abilities. Okay. Not hard CCs, just any of Maui's abilities, so including his one, should activate the passive. Okay. This something to keep in mind is like these kit ideas. I don't want all of them implemented, right? And if some of these ideas are implemented, his kit will become very strong. So he's probably gonna need nerfs. But I think something like this, right? You won't have to rely on your teammates to hit a hard CC, because a lot of Maui's like hard CCs are very reliant on like other setup or just like being really good. But if you just hit your one on somebody, right, an ability that doesn't require you to put yourself at any risk at all, really, comparatively to like jumping in or ulting, if you just hit a one, you can actually follow up with two autos and pull auto somebody. So if they don't have a dash, like that's a really good CC chain. So I think having it so you can proc Maui passive off the one would be very strong, and would make this character a bit more accessible to players. It would make this and then another change, lower the internal cooldown, right? 10 seconds for this passive, very long time. If you lower the internal cooldown and do this, instantly this character becomes like way better. Like Maui would become insane, I'm not gonna lie. So that's like my first idea. Even if you just lower the internal cooldown, like that'd be a good start. Just have it so like your teammates hitting CCs actually matters, because then it's not just like, oh, I hit the stun but I have to wait 10 seconds for the ability again, right? Like that'd be good. Maui 1, this ability has seen a lot of change actually. It's an ability that's been changed a lot because it's just very hard to use, and like getting your teammates to follow up on this ability is really hard, because unlike Sobek where you pluck and the enemy is pulled behind you into your team, you're pulling them in front of you, which means if your backline doesn't have really good range, it's really hard for them to follow up on you effectively. So we've seen this ability get a lot of like vortex speed changes and stuff like that. So it's like, what can you really do to make this ability easier to follow up on? I don't really know, to be honest. Without completely reworking the ability, like it shouldn't be an instant pull. We could see something more so like Thresh from League. I hate to compare Maui to Thresh from League, but literally half of Maui's kit is the same as Thresh. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe you can make it so when you won somebody, you pull them in, and you can reactivate to pull yourself toward them. This would make it so you can lower the vortex rate. Basically, like, what I mean by this is, like, in League, the thing with Thresh is when you hook somebody. Now, a big difference is the hook doesn't go through waves, which I think Maui's one does need to go through waves. But basically, when you hook somebody, you pull them at a slow rate, but then you can reactivate the hook to pull yourself towards them, right? So, like, they could do that, and that would allow you to, basically, you can just instant jump on them, like up down with the jump for a stun, or if you do the passive rework or synergize with passive rework, maybe make it so that the one, like when you double proc the one, it automatically activates your passive auto, so that you just have to auto. You don't have to auto twice. That'd be like something you could do with it. That'd be kind of cool. And then the second ability, Mystical Lua. This ability is actually, in my opinion, the easiest Maui ability to use in his kit, just because the best way to use it is for the movement speed and prop buff. So, like, if anything, maybe, I don't know what you would do, but make this ability less oriented towards the MS and prop buff, and more so toward the pull. I don't know how you would do this. One way they could do this is they're adding the interact key to Smite 2. So maybe rather than having to wait in the bubble, you just go up to it and you interact and you get pulled, and you remove the movement speed and prop buffs from it. That would be decent. But generally, I think this ability is just like, it's balanced not towards the, like, save your teammate with a pull. Like, I only do that about 2 or 3 times a game with Maui, like, because it requires your teammates to have brains, and it also just isn't the main function of this ability. The main function of this ability is to, like, is mobility, right? And just making your team tankier. Like, you kind of use this more like a Nesh Silence, if anything. You just throw it down on your team, and you give your team a lot of prots. It's more of an aura ability than anything, right? Solar Swing. I actually had this is like one of the bigger ideas I've had, and it's kind of like harder to explain in words, but basically, you start your jump at a position. So let's say you start here, right? So, like, your circle can end up here, and your circle can end up here, right? That's like your stun circle. Obviously, it's a bit disproportionate, but rather than just having these two select, like, basically a straight line of a zone of where your circle can land, because, like, you can go anywhere in the circle or on this line to land. What if we, like, open it up like this? You can set up, like, a sort of predetermined route within a circle. So, like, you can go this way, or you can go this way, right? Or you can go this way. And, well, it doesn't sound right the way I'm saying it, but basically, like, as you're going through the swing, you can switch up where you go within a circle, or, like, around the circle. So you can, like, take the circular motion and end up here, or here, or here, right? And just sort of, like, any motion you want, as opposed to just a straight line motion. And you can change it as you're going through the ability. So it's not like a predetermined set line location based off where you started, but you have, like, more options. I don't know how they would code this, right? But I think there would be some sort of mouse and keyboard motion that you would use to, like, sort of functionally change where you're landing, as opposed to just, like, a straight line. Like, you use your mouse to turn your camera, and you, like, determine where you want to land. But this would make this ability, basically, this would make this ability harder for enemies to read. and more versatile. Right? Well, that's kind of redundant because like the versatility is what makes it harder to read, but you get the idea. Just like making this ability more just like versatile for the player, so they're not just like forced to go on a straight line location based off where they started, right? And that way the ability would actually double at least in value. This ability just becomes way better. So you would want to nerf it in some way. Like, I don't know how you'd want to do it, but there would be some way to nerf it to make that balance so that it's not just OP. And again, like, these kit reworks, I hope they don't add everything. I don't even expect them to add any of this, right? Obviously, it's like, it'd be cool. But these are just ideas I want. My opinion doesn't really matter, right? And I'm not a pro, so it's like, that makes my opinion less relevant. Just sort of ideas. Ultimate. So, I think Maui ult, it's like, it's fine the way it is. So I'm not saying to change it at all. But if they were to change it, I think a cool idea would be like basically a complete rework. You go into the air and pull up an island. But instead of you pulling the enemies into the air, right? So like, let's say you're here, right? You're here. And you throw your ult here. Instead of pulling enemies into the air, you displace them around the island depending on where they were, like next to the island. So if they were on the left side, they go there. If they're sort of like top side, they go there, right? Basically, you displace them around the island. And then you choose to swing the island on the ground in a certain direction. Okay? So you can choose to swing it like this way. Like while you're in the air, like you have like a second while you're banished. Kind of like a noodle, basically. Like you're in the air, you're waiting, you choose a direction to throw the island, but it'd be a lot shorter of a time. And basically you just, wherever you throw the island, the enemies get displaced. Basically like hurt pushed on the ground, like they don't leave the ground. They get like pushed in that direction. Okay? And the island does like the initial damage when you pull it up, but it also does like additional tick damage based on how long they're getting dragged for. I think the idea behind this is it adds like more variety to the ultimate, because rather than always trying to hit the enemies with the initial, because obviously the big issue is like if you hit every enemy with the initial ultimate, some of them are going to get displaced to other sides of the island, like that, right? And like that, and like that. So if you pull the island this way, you're not pulling everybody on the island. You're only pulling one or two. So you're actually getting a lot less displacement value. But if you intentionally throw the island to the side of a clump of enemies, like let's say there's like 3 guys here, okay? Instead of throwing the island like centrally, which would displace them into random directions of the island, then you get a less value pull. You throw the island to the right of them, and then you shove the island to the left, right? And you're actually you're displacing 3 enemies. What this does for Maui Ultimate completely changes the way this ult works, because rather than a setup ultimate, rather than a full setup ability, it changes to a disruption ability. Meaning, your teammates are going to have a harder time initially following up on this, but you're just like regular Maui ult, you're panicking the enemies and you're disrupting them. And this would take a lot of, like, basically mechanical skill off of the ultimate, but you get to make cooler decisions with it, right? Like, do you play for the initial damage and like 1 or 2 guys you get a full displacement on, or do you play for the full displacement value? So it's like, it gives you some versatility. Granted, Maui ult in general has that sort of, like, Maui ult right now is basically you're playing chess with the enemy. You want to figure out how they're going to react to the Maui ult, and then you throw it down depending on how you think they're going to react, right? This becomes less of like you're playing with the enemy, as more so you're playing with like your own ideas, right? Because it's like you're not really trying to see what the enemy does to react. You're just trying to change how you play the game. So it does take the interaction with the enemy out of it, sort of. But it just gives you more versatility to do something that is cool. This one is like, I don't think Maui yall necessarily needs that much of a change. So I just think this is a cool idea. Because you're just, like, just picturing an island just dragging guys across the map is really cool. But yeah, it doesn't need to be added. So I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. It's just some ideas I had. One idea for each ability, pretty much. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you do, comment down below. You know, tell me what you think about Maui's kit and if any changes it at all. And yeah, catch y'all later.